an idea on how to fix the diamond. He took the diamond and he took the crack and he started engraving and engraving until finally he saw them. They put together this most beautiful tree that he engraved into the diamond, and the crown and the diamond looked even more beautiful than it did before. And so the challenge really, I think, is, and the lesson of part of this is that we are in a situation that no one has ever been with before, and this is completely unprecedented. And there are a lot of cracks in our worlds, and our challenge is to be able to find a way to, we're not going to be able to fix the crack, but if we're able to make the crack into something beautiful and look for the opportunities that we have to help people, to help ourselves by helping people, then somehow we can take this very, very difficult crack and make it into something beautiful. And so with that introduction, I'm going to turn over the floor to Fran, who I think is muted. Is that true? Fran, can we hear you?
Yeah.
We'll talk. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we hear you, Fran. So we're going to begin the session with Fran. That's going to do a little bit of a meditation exercise to try to get us to focus and to be mindful. And so, Fran, if you could start that.
Sure. I also want to thank all of you for putting this together, and for acknowledging that as much as we're focused on our physical health, that our emotional health deserves the same attention. And I appreciate that you're mindful of that. And I know that we've all been bombarded with a lot of stress, a lot of negativity, a lot of concerns, and it's kind of throwing us out of balance. But we all have a tool that we can use to shift from the bombardment of our sympathetic nervous system to the reactivation of our parasympathetic nervous system, which we'll learn more about soon. But one of the tools that we have at our disposal is the tool of meditation and of relaxation. I know that there are many apps out there, but there's also our own intuition and what works for us. So I'm going to ask you if you can focus in with me and be as mindful as you possibly can be, because we thought it would be nice to start this program with a bit of mindfulness. And let's start by just finding a place where we feel comfortable. I'll use my husband as an example. He's sitting in a chair with a nice back. He's uncrossed his hands and his feet. He feels nice and relaxed and comfortable. So shift around, stretch a little bit, get into a very comfortable position, and let's let yourself settle in. And as you do that, I'd like for you to let your eyes softly close. And now I want you to take a moment to feel where your feet are planted in the ground, the chair that your legs are seated on. Take a moment to feel your shoulders softening and your neck relaxing. Bring that relaxation down through your chest and your abdomen, to your legs and your knees and your shins. Relaxing all of the muscles throughout your ankles and your feet and your toes. And take a moment to scan your entire body and your face for any tension that's remaining, and just let that tension go. Allow yourself permission to just let go. Let's also let go of any judgments about ourselves and this practice. Welcome yourself as you are at this very moment in time. And now we're going to bring our attention to our breath. And as we do that, we're going to take some very deep cleansing breaths. Breathing in through our nose, holding that breath, and releasing through our mouth. And as we take our second breath, breathing in through our nose, I want you to imagine a balloon in your abdomen. And as you breathe in, I want you to inflate that balloon in your belly and hold that breath. And now release that breath and release the balloon and flatten. Let's breathe in once more through our nose and inflating our abdomen. And now release through the mouth. And on that exhalation, flatten the abdomen. Again, breathing in, notice the inflating of your abdomen as you inhale, holding the breath. And now notice the relaxation as you flatten your abdomen and you exhale. Now let's breathe in a sense of peace, letting go of any tension and letting go of any anxiety as you exhale. Notice the deepness of your breath, the quietness of your mind, and the stillness of your body. Now take a few moments to breathe nice and evenly, taking yourself to a place that's so deeply relaxing. You might imagine the warmth of the sun as you sit at the foot of an ocean or as you climb a mountain peak. Enjoy that moment and allow yourself to breathe nice and evenly as you bring your awareness back to this place and to this time. I'm going to ask you to slowly open your eyes as you transition back to this room, knowing that you can always return to that place and state of relaxation. And as you open your eyes, you feel refreshed and recharged and rejuvenated. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fran. I'm not sure if anybody's awake still, but if they are, we're going to begin the next part of our program, which is asking our questions to our panel. And actually, our first question really is to Dr. Mendelowitz. Alan, I want to basically try to understand and share, if you can share with the group, you know, we're living in a world where we're feeling so anxious about the uncertainty and so overwhelmed and facing all of these challenges that we're facing. Maybe Dr. Mendelowitz, if you can share with us what actually happens physiologically when we have these emotions of anxiety and of being overwhelmed.
So when we were talking about it earlier today, I just kind of wanted to give the quick little spiel that I give my residents who I train and patients, to give you a little bit of the biological understanding of what people think occurs when people get anxious. So the first take home for everybody is that anxiety is absolutely necessary for us to survive. So God in his wisdom needed a way to create a mechanism for people to escape danger. So our example for danger will be that we have a tiger in front of us. That mechanism that we have is called fight or flight. Franny referred it to before as a sympathetic system. So you have a tiger in front of you and you need a way to be able to run away from the tiger or to fight the tiger within a fraction of a second. So the system that was created was a system that, using what people refer to as adrenaline or epinephrine, turns on. Your heart will race so you can run away or fight. Your breathing will become very, very rapid. You'll get anxious and fearful because you're in a dangerous situation. All the blood will leave your gut, so you get a little bit of butterflies, go to your muscles, your big ones, so you can run and fight. And that's the beginning of fight or flight. If we waited for the tiger to be in front of us, we would be dead. So therefore, we needed to have a trigger mechanism, a way that if you hear the wind in the leaves and it rustles, you don't know whether it's the wind or a tiger, but either way, fight or flight turns on just in case it's danger. That is kind of a good example of what anxiety is. It's the idea that you're becoming anxious about an unknown situation that might be fearful, could be a tiger, but it could also be the wind. But you need it because you can't wait for the tiger to be in front of you. So anxiety is a real piece of this anticipation of what this danger could be and an absolute vital piece of the mechanism in order for us to escape danger. Now, in the modern times, we don't have tigers in front of us, but this system will hook in all the time when we're worried about things at our job, we're worried about making our paychecks, we're worried about family, we're worried about real dangers, we're worried about illness. So anxiety becomes a very important piece of this fight or flight system, and it's mediated by several chemicals in the brain. So everybody knows chemicals like serotonin, we talk about epinephrine, which is adrenaline, and the anxiety neurotransmitters, which the benzodiazepines work with, which is really the GABA system. But the important point, without giving you too much detail, is the idea that if anybody who's on this call today did not have some anxiety about what's going on in the world, we would love to study them because this is such an anxiety-provoking situation, because that's also not. What we're worried about is when anxiety gets to the point that it starts to affect your ability to function, to sleep, to be able to not be able to take this whole situation and be able to figure out the best way to handle it. So you want some anxiety in this fight or flight response to help us to do the things that we need to do, but you want to make sure that the anxiety does not become overwhelming. And that's for most of us. Now, within our population are people who generally are anxious before all of this, people who obsess about contamination and illness before all of this, and then we add this unbelievable situation into their midst. That becomes overwhelming because all of a sudden, I can't tell you, don't worry, there's nothing happening, because obviously this time there is something happening, but you still have to take a step back and use the skills that you have to try to say how much of this anxiety is really affecting my ability to do the things that I need to do. I need to make sure that I'm prepared. I need to listen to directives of people to stay in the house, but I can't let it debilitate me by trying to remember that some of the anxiety I can't control, but the bulk of it is a response to something that's unknown. And all I can do is try to work with what I can do, which is my response to the anxiety that I have. The best way to do that, even more than medications, is kind of what Franny was referring to before, breathing. So deep breathing will counteract the rapid breathing of fight or flight. Meditation, prayer, exercise are all things that work the opposite of fight or flight. They will decrease these anxiety kinds of symptoms. If you feel overwhelmed after doing all those techniques, modern medicine and modern psychiatry does have agents that can help you do those kinds of things. So what you want to do now is stay away from things that make you more anxious, too much coffee, too much news, too much of this. Do things that are helpful, meditation, exercise, deep breathing, prayer. And if it reaches a point that it's interfering with your function, maybe that can be a bigger offline discussion. But in general, for people, things that decrease anxiety in the short term are things that are called benzodiazepines, things like Ativan, Valium, Klonopin, those kind of medicines, but they're only short-term Band-Aids. They're not going to fix what really affects most people. And for the people who are obsessing, that's an entirely different mechanism that has to do with serotonin, and sometimes antidepressants can help them. But the key, I think, for people is to understand that anxiety is a normal part of life. It is what we do when we have unknown danger, that everyone is a little bit anxious now. A little anxiety, again, helps us to survive, to work on making sure we're prepared for unknown dangers. But if too much anxiety is interfering with your ability to function, and that means you're not sleeping, you're tired all day, you're affecting your appetite, then you have to think about whether you need a little bit of somebody to talk to, some help, and what we can do to help you through these kinds of crises. So that's a kind of a quick little introduction, if that's helpful.
Thank you so much, Alan. And you really addressed some of the primary questions that are issues that we're dealing with, I think, as we face issues of anxiety, those who have a tendency for OCD, and there's a range, if I'm not mistaken, but even if you have a slight tendency for that, that's going to be or heightened at this point. Obviously, levels of depression and feelings of isolation. And you shared a couple of ideas that people can, practical ideas that people can turn to. And I'm wondering about the other members of our panel, and we'll start with Miriam. If you could share maybe some additional ideas strategies on how to sort of tackle any of these feelings that you're having, feelings of isolation, depression, or anxiety. Maybe you could share some of that.
Good time to reach out, make some telephone calls to friends, to relatives, ask how they're doing. It's good for them. It's good for you to know that you are thinking of them. FaceTime with your grandchildren, with your family. They're also concerned that you're doing well, so you want to have that open line of communication. Taking a walk, going to the park with the proper distancing, although I need to practice what I'm expressing right now, clean out your garage.
And mine.
I still have things piled up from Hurricane Sandy, but do a special project that you said only if I had the time to do it. But the social connection, calling friends that you haven't spoken to for a very long time, knowing that you're thinking of them is a wonderful, very special, it's not only, it's a blessing, but it's also so healthy for one to do in their mind and in their body, is to reach out to others.
Thank you, Miriam. And I think that's an excellent point. I think that one of the things that I find personally when I'm dealing with being overwhelmed or is trying to sort of look outward as opposed to inward. I'm not sure that's always healthy, but I know I mentioned the other day, I think on Friday, is that what gets me through my day is that every morning I wake up and I think about what can I do to help somebody else, and that helps me. It's selfish. It helps me just be able to not think about all of the challenges that I have to deal with on a regular basis, given the circumstances. I'm wondering if Chana or Fran, if you have any other suggestions, strategies in dealing with this. And I think I thought what Miriam talked about is a sense of accomplishment. Cleaning out my garage. I'm just so happy that she volunteered for that. But even finding a sense of accomplishment, that's great, because that gives you that feeling, that jump that you need to make you feel good. But anything else, especially.
But it's
yes, Miriam. Sorry.
It's also when you tackle these projects that you've put away for such a long time, it gives you a sense of control. And that's what we need right now, that sense of control.
That's an excellent point. I'm really also, and again, I turn to our panel, and Chana and Fran, maybe you could share. I think there's an incredible sense of isolation. I'm finding people I give my classes online, and people that I would have never seen in a million years are that desperate and they're attending the classes. I think people are just looking for connection and finding a way and dealing with this isolation, which is really something we've never experienced. And maybe, or if you could share some strategies. Why don't we start with Chana?
Sure. I think I have to agree. I'm struck at how many people I've reached out to without even kind of thinking about it, and I just felt the need to text or email or call them, and their response back, because it is needed. So I have like all these new apps on my phone that I communicate with people through, I didn't know existed, but now we're using them because we all want to stay in touch. So I think it is such a really wonderful thing. One of the things that I keep thinking about, in addition to my social work, I'm also a doula, and I work with pregnant people and people who have just given birth. And one of the things that I always talk about with my my clients before they give birth is that when you get home with a brand new baby, when it's your first baby, it's okay that it feels totally crazy because your life is so different. It's 100% different from what it was when you were going to work every day, being, you know, in an office or whatever your work setting was. And now all of a sudden you're home all day with one responsibility and one job, and you can barely get out of the house. And I'm struck at how similar this feels, that this level of social isolation that can come with having a new baby, feeling so disconnected, feeling like you're in your head. This isn't what it is. And the truth is that what most people who work with new parents that you tell people is this is exactly what everybody else is feeling. So it really in some ways feels very similar in my head. And the one thing that I tell people a lot of the time is that it will not be like this forever. This isn't permanent. These feelings and this experience, and the truth is that especially in this time of Corona, we don't know, we have no answers, right? I feel like a week ago I was saying, well, it'll be a week, and now I'm like, it might be longer. We don't know, but it won't be like this forever. And even this initial sense of when you're home in social isolation, social distancing, working from home, it's your life turned on its head, but with every day you develop your own new sense of normalcy. So what felt so foreign and uncomfortable yesterday may be a little bit more comfortable tomorrow. And moving forward with that kind of just, you know, sense of it's not going to feel like this discomfort forever.
Fran?
That was wonderful. I so appreciate your analogy of being a new parent with a new baby, because one of the things I would always say to people is that being a parent, especially of young ones, is a lonely job. And I think you addressed it head on. And I so appreciate your attention to connection. And I think this is so hard for me because in my work, I'm always looking to foster relationships. And I speak to people about just kind of being with their loved one or their friend, even if they're not talking, just be in their presence, just be close by, put a hand on their shoulder. And we can't do that anymore, but we can still be in relation to other people. We can still have relationships without necessarily being in the same home as we discovered. And so I can really just speak from personal experience. And I don't know who's listening here in the house, but I think here I've discovered so many new ways of interacting with people. Either through my work, and I think you're right, Chana, it's, you know, using Zoom telemental health therapy is getting a little more comfortable each day. But here at home, we had a very exciting game through 3 different homes playing code names last night. And it was hysterical. It was so fun, a little competitive, but it's something that we can all do. And Josh, who's in England, actually texted and said, well, wait, we can also download something called House Party, and we can all kind of get involved in other people's games as well. So that's something that I learned. I also had a morning coffee clutch with some friends throughout New York and Pennsylvania this morning, and that was really delightful. So the truth is we can make this work. One of the things that I study is improv, and this is really an exercise in improvisation. We can all use what we always tell our kids to limit. And when I've been working with kids, I said, what's the best part of all of this? And a lot of them have said, I can use my screen all day, every day. It's like, so we can actually use these things to connect.
Oh, thank you. And I think, you know, part of that is how do we connect to people on the outside? And then the other challenge is dealing with the people on the inside. And it's nice that you guys are having games, and my family were able to have some games but I've noticed that my house, which I thought was quite big, suddenly became significantly smaller. The personalities are getting bigger, and it's just becomes a little bit overwhelming. And so what I wanted to address is how to deal with the various members of our family, whether they're here or out in our home or outside our home. Fascinating, I heard recently from Dr. David Pelkowitz in one of the sessions that I did online. Dr. Pelkowitz spoke a few months back in our shul. And one of the things he said is that in China, and I mentioned this in the group, in China, now that things have settled, at least that's what they're saying, they opened all the government offices, and the first week back, the office for divorces were overwhelmed. They were being flooded with new cases of divorces that they actually had to shut down. It's like the stock market, because there were so many applications for divorces. They said because there's been so much tension and spending so much time with each other. And then there's also, that's with our spouses, even with of course our children, and the challenge of homeschooling or the telecommunicating, schooling online, and the frustrations with that. And then there's also the challenge of dealing with elderly parents who are not there, but you need to be able to take care of them, and that kind of pulls you in different directions. Chana, I was wondering if you could address, I know you have 3 very, very, very cute kids. I'm just going to remind you that they're cute and beautiful, because you might not think that right now. I have to with them, right? But
they're sleeping, so I can
sleeping
that now.
Aren't they so nice when they sleep? Yes.
Fabulous.
So maybe you could share a little bit of, I don't know, strategies, or I think, I know personally, I think I need a little validation that everybody else is going through the same frustrations.
Yeah, it's been crazy. It's been and I say that, and I have a job where I actually have been having to go, so I'm out of the house sometimes, and my kids are actually benefiting from Zoom online school. So that being said, I'm still going crazy, not even dealing with it to the extreme that some people are. But I think, I've seen a lot of these schedules going around the internet, and I think that, like everything else in life, and that I always advise and discuss with the people that I work with and that I meet, you have to figure out what works for you. So some people work really well with a schedule, and every day and posting it on the wall, and you can look to the schedule and refer to the schedule, and it feels very concrete. And some people do not work well. And sometimes you have to know yourself, and sometimes you have to know that day, because maybe one day a schedule is going to work and another day it's not. And maybe for one kid it does, and for another kid it doesn't. And it might take some testing the waters of figuring it out. I decided from day one that we needed to have a snack schedule, because my kids will snack all day long. And I knew that it was just gonna, thankfully I'm not worrying about running out of snacks at this point, but it left this kind of open-endedness to the day that I knew we wouldn't be able to have them doing school and getting through the day in a somewhat structured, organized way that then they would relax at night. So figuring out things and navigating through and realizing that some days and some moments and some hours are going to be hard, and that's okay. And it's okay to have hours or moments or days where everybody's asleep and you're like, this wasn't good, because everybody's feeling that. Everybody's having those days and moments and experiences where you look back and you say, I didn't react the right way. And I've had many times with my own kids. And I try very hard, especially right now where I'm overreacting for things, to recognize that they are so thrown off of their normalcy and they don't understand what's going on underneath. So I try to check in with them. I think that even small kids, even, my kindergartner, I try to check in and just kind of validate that this feels funny, right? Like not going to school and seeing my teacher on the computer, and not seeing my friends and not getting on the bus. This is not normal, and we know that. And letting them have time to express that in whatever way it is. Because we can't lie and say this is normal. Oh, we're gonna have school at home. This is not normal. And kids see right through that. At least, I mean, my kids do. I'm sure everybody's do. They know it. And I think validating that for yourself as a parent to know that this is really, really hard. You're certainly not the only one. And there really is a community to support you. And that if you do have an experience with your kid that doesn't feel like I didn't handle it right, that you can talk about that with them and make it a learning experience.
Thank you, Chana. And we have, I turn to the rest of the panel, you can really address any age group. We have a couple here, right? So we have Fran and Alan. They seem to be getting along very nicely. We shut off
I've had to be in the hospital all weekend.
Again, how do we deal with this? How do we deal with this where we're not our best? I'm finding myself not my best self. And therefore not necessarily responding the same way that I would like to.
Well, just exactly what you said and what Chana said, and that's to, I like, kind of that idea of kind of checking in with ourselves before we kind of deal with our kids, because they do take their cues from us, and it's okay if we are not okay. Isn't that a book? It's okay not to be okay. It's okay. But in terms of in relationship in terms of a couple, I would say also kind of acknowledging fears and taking the initiative to say, well, that was because I'm afraid I'm gonna get this from you because you're in the hospital all day. It's I think that we are good at, I love this phrase, but we're good at interpersonalizing personal issues. So we're so good, you said when we reflect out, it's very easy to kind of like project my issues onto you when they have something to do with a deep-rooted fear of mine. There's this, the author, pardon me, he's Harville Hendricks. He wrote that book, Getting the Love You Want, and he said, very often, if you really look deep enough, the thing that bothers you most about your partner has something to do with something that bothers you about yourself. So, look, it's not easy to be so reflective, but I would start with communicating things like fears and anxiety and trying to figure out what's causing this big exaggerated feeling. Your turn.
The only thing I would add, I think it's okay when we model for our children that we also don't know what's going to happen and how to handle this. But the only thing we know we can do is that we're in charge of how we do respond. How do you respond to things that are overwhelming and anxiety provoking? By taking a step back, trying to be prepared, admitting that it can be anxiety provoking, but you got to do the best you can do, and that it's okay for them to see how you're responding, and then to set it as a model for them to see that it's okay when the world is in this kind of situation and disarray to not know and to try to just cross your T's, dot your I's, deep breathe, relax, have fun, try not to get in each other's hair. If so, walk away, walk the dog, get outside, but trying to do all the coping skills that you need in order, because none of us have done this before. We've never all been in each other's hair for so long. And you got to figure out a way to
make TikToks. Just kidding.
To roll with the punches. It is a moment in time, and the other thing is it is finite. There will be light at the end of the tunnel. Life will come back to a normal, maybe a new normal, but it will. There's always light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes when you're in the tunnel, it doesn't feel that way, but these things are finite, and we will come back, and we'll figure it out.
One of the issues I mentioned is worrying and dealing with the worries of some of the senior population. who everybody is saying are the most susceptible. And even, I know with my mother, I can't really be there for her. I mean, we're trying to provide for her and taking care of her and shopping for her, but I don't want to be inside. If I've been exposed, I'm worried about exposing her. Miriam, or any of, maybe you can share with us how do we approach that? How do we approach our guilt? How do we approach their anxiety, which is extremely legitimate given the circumstances?
How do we approach, I'm sorry?
How do we approach addressing addressing the seniors in our lives, our family members, our parents, etc., who are feeling the most vulnerable given the circumstances, as it says, on a regular basis, and yet we're, even like I was saying, my mother, I can't give her a hug, and I can't provide her. I can't get too close. And how do we address that? How do we deal with that given the circumstances?
Well, it's very, very difficult because I feel it from the other end as being the elderly parent for my children. And it's
young at heart, Miriam.
Young at heart. But it is very, very difficult not to have the physical connection, the touch, the kiss, the hug with our children. And they are in the same way they are. I think that Rona is on this site now, so I have to be careful when I say my daughter. Very, very protective. Maybe to the point of being overprotective. Don't do this, calling in, checking 2-3 times a day how you're doing. I found that with the social distancing, it's very necessary for our children to know that we are social distancing. When I visit children, I visit Rona, they live in Merrick. When we meet, we either meet in the park, and she told me to bring a couple of chairs. We did that yesterday. Or when I'm at her house, we could stay in the backyard. That's what we do in terms of, the connection. In terms of the senior adults, to assure them that it's a struggle, it's a challenge, but again, it will get better, and we'll be better and stronger for it. And maybe it's a time now that we can have deeper conversations with our families rather than, hi, how are you, da, 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 da. But it lends ourselves to more meaningful, when we meet with them, more meaningful dialogue with our children, with our grandchildren, with our parents, adult parents. But it's very hard because I'm on it on the both sides of it as well. But we will get through it.
Please God, yes. I'm going to throw this question out, and I know Jordan, maybe Jordan, you want to ask the question?
Sure.
About college students?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So obviously all the college kids are no longer in college right now. They're home. Some of them are virtual schooling, but they've really been thrust into a new world where they went from having tons of friends around and basically an independent life, maybe for the first time for those who were freshmen in school. And now they're sort of back being trapped in their home. And not only can they not see their friends from school, but they can't even see their friends from here because they need to be socially distanced. So do you have any tips for that the millennial age group, or that age group, in terms of how to deal with this sudden change in circumstances? Maybe Fran, I don't know, Fran and Alan, if you want to take this one. I know you have some current college students in your family.
Or in the room now.
Which
Right.
is stuck in.
We're kind of like motioning. You want to say anything?
Well, I think we
Hey,
all remember
hey,
that when
guys.
we went to school, coming back to our parents' house was very, very difficult. Because once you start to achieve independence, it's very hard to get back into the swing. You can pull it off for a weekend, but full time, it's not easy.
Right. And you've had almost a year worth of experiences that they have no clue about, which is a good thing.
So I think it's been an exercise in trying to be able to take a step back for us as parents to appreciate that and to try not to put them in the same roles, and to try to put them in more adult roles. However, on the other hand, my children, God bless them, when they come into the house can sometimes easily fall back into their old roles, and forget the fact that they're at a different phase in life. So it's been a challenge, trying to figure this out, being all in such close quarters. But there's a lot of love in the room, so we're making it through. But I really think it takes it takes everybody to take a step back and to try to put yourself in the other shoes and say, wow, my daughter just got half her freshman year taken away from her. She's home, does not want to be here, but she can't say that because, she loves us. But we know she doesn't want to be here.
I think that's great. I think it is hard to be a reflective parent in this situation, but just as they take their lead from us, I think in this situation, I should probably take my lead from Alyssa, because she actually, you almost could see her like the GPS recalibrating as the days have carried on. And I will say one of the things that she did that I actually admire is that she reorganized her entire room. She took everything out and kind of cleansed and put everything back in a different place, almost symbolically showing us that she's ready to start this new chapter, which will be next semester tomorrow, in this whole new environment, and taking over Josh's room, sorry Josh, as a kind of a home office. So maybe I need to take my lead from her, that she kind of knows what she needs at this point.
I also think that our adult children have gained have fine-tuned what is important. My grandson had to be tested for the virus because his roommate was positive. And thank God he's negative. But I said, Corey, this is before we knew that he was going to be negative. I said, Corey, he's 21 years old. Are you all right? And he said, Grandma, as long as we have love in our family, we're okay. So they are recognizing also the tremendous, what is important in life right now. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's great.
Jordan, you want to?
Yeah, sure. I think we've gotten a couple of questions along the same lines, and they're submitted privately, but I'm wondering if one of them might have been submitted by my own husband, because the question is, what do we do with family members who are struggling and losing it? I mean, I don't know about other people, but I have a lot of anxiety. And so as the person who is not the more anxious, right, of a couple in a relationship or in a family, how do you help someone who is really having a difficult time keeping their anxiety in check and using their coping skills in this environment? As the person who has their own anxieties but maybe aren't as exacerbated, how do you assist someone who's struggling?
Miriam, I guess one of the things is you support them in the fact that this is an unbelievably anxiety-provoking situation for anybody, and that it's okay to be anxious and be overwhelmed, and try to be supportive of the strengths that they do have, but also point out to them lovingly with a disclaimer that as their significant other or family member, that you have to also point out that sometimes their anxiety may be interfering with their ability to be the best they can in their relationships. It may not be a good thing for the children to witness that they're feeling so overwhelmed, and to try to use every kind of coping skill and to offer to be part of that coping skill. I will walk with you. I'll listen to you. I will exercise with you. And if it really reaches a point that the person, again, can't tolerate it, then it's maybe a time to have somebody to talk to professionally, get some help talk to the rabbi, talk to somebody who's a mental health professional,
Talk space.
in trying to understand that these are unusual times, but as a loving significant other, you want to be able to point out that things are overwhelming.
And I would just like to add that there are also some kind of clutch questions that the other person might offer to ask. And also, please remember that we're all different. We all approach these things differently. But one of the questions that I think is very helpful is the question of, can I be helpful? Or what can I do to help? Because I think it's a little easier to ask things like, why are you acting that way? Well, you're losing it. Instead of, is there anything that I can do to be helpful right now? How or what questions versus why questions, which put people on the defensive.
That's right. Any other comments from our panel on that question?
I want to just add something I think is be meaningful for people who are experiencing anxiety from a spouse or a partner or somebody in the house with you, that having those moments to sit with them in it and normalize it, even if it's just a minute, even if it becomes like a mantra that you say together, to say, this is normal, the anxiety, the situation is not normal, and we will get through it. I love mantras, so I think they're helpful, especially when the anxiety becomes like the ruminating thought, and then explodes. So, and I think that something else that a partner or a loved one can do is to encourage some piece of routine, whether it's the morning routine, because I think that this time where everybody's working from home, everybody's living at home, nobody's getting out as much as they used to, the sense of days weaving in and out, and nobody has to get dressed anymore or see anybody except for behind a computer screen, can heighten that anxiety. With new parents, I often say, when you lose that sleep, that's breeding ground, and not seeing the light of day, and nights are days and days are nights, that's breeding ground for anxiety and depression. Anxiety and depression love that time when we're off our senses like that. So any small piece of routine, getting dressed every day, not being in sweatpants, taking a shower in the morning, having your meals at certain times, sometimes that can be really helpful. And saying, put your phone away during the day. Don't check the news. Don't check in on social media. Sometimes you just need somebody else to put it in there rather than you talking about it in your head.
Chana, that's great too, because someone else also asked a question about the news, and the fact that there is obviously a lot of information out there that we're constantly being bombarded with, and not all of it is good information. Some of it is just, sensational and exacerbating people's fears, and isn't necessarily even validated by any real good source. So what tips do you have for people to deal with sort of this constant bombardment of information that we're getting that might be, exacerbating anxiety?
I would offer that something that I did was almost like a pilot study on myself. And I did kind of the Corona cleanse, I did the news cleanse, and I decided that I would just kind of look at the news twice during the day to see if my anxiety level dropped. And in fact, it did. So when I could move away from it and take a walk and make a TikTok dance and read, just get away from it, I felt so much better. So I also love Hannah's idea of developing routines, because when everything is unstable, having something that we know is stable is helpful, whether it's meditation in the morning or taking a walk, or for you, Jordan, if you're looking for help from a partner, do something together, binge watch a new TV show, or take a walk together, or sit down and read something together, I think could be helpful.
Yeah, I totally agree, Fran. I found myself addicted to the TV, to MSNBC, between MSNBC and CNN. And then I said, well, maybe I'll turn to Fox for a while, for a minute or two. It was getting so much. I felt myself so irritated, anxious, angry, fearful, panicky. And then I decided I just need to close the TV. And I just went outside to the backyard, just had the sun hit my face, and I felt so much better. I said, it's enough already. Enough. Enough.
And if,
I also limit myself in how much I watch.
right. One of the things that Chana said I thought was very good, and it's something that she said many things that were very good. Her dad's on the line. But even being conscious of the other people in your home, and in a very non-terribly critical way, being able to say, maybe we don't need the phone while we're having dinner, or maybe even watching enough television. And sometimes we need these reminders to sort of have somebody to click in, because we get so swallowed up in these clouds, and that the people who love us and who are around us, whether they're in our homes or if you're calling in to remind us to say, well, no, set some limits, because if you don't, you're going to lose your head. I want to just share one thought, and I know we're a little bit. I want to let everybody go soon, and I think this has been fantastic for me, at least, and I'm sure for so many others. One of the things that keeps getting mentioned is the importance of validation, and I know, when this started, my son, who is 9, and in 4th grade, and when he found out that we weren't going back to school again, he said right away, I can't believe it. I'm going to miss. We're supposed to have an ice cream party, and we're not going to have the ice cream party. And he was so upset. And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, the world's coming to an end, right? There's so much going on, whatever, and this is what you're worrying about. But in his world, that is what he was worrying about. And I was reminded of the story, actually, that I heard from someone who worked for Yachad, which is the Organization for Special Needs. And they told the story that after the Sparrows a terrorist attack in Sparrows in town in Jerusalem years ago, and there was a kid, a Yachad, a special needs kid, teenager, who saw this terrible attack, and it was so horrific, and immediately the kid started crying as soon as they heard about it, and said, "That's my favorite pizza shop," and was so upset that the pizza shop was destroyed. And you're like, but in their world, that's what they were thinking, and it's important to, in the Torah we have that term ba'asher hu sham, where they are, and if that's what they're worrying about, they need to be validated for that. Everybody has their own whatever it is, and while it might not be, you might not think like, why are you focusing on that? At the end of the day, you need to walk them through it and say, okay, this is what you're focusing on. Well, I understand, and I know you're upset. I know you were looking forward to it, et cetera, and then try to help them, walk them through it wherever they are. I wanna sort of try to wrap up a few things, but before we do, I wanna, if we could possibly ask the panel, what is it maybe that you could tell us that we could be doing as a community? And there are things that we're working on now. If I can actually give a shout out to Rob Liebman, who is helping to organize our Chaverim program. I've been reaching out to a number of people individually, but we would like to create this buddy program where we're just going to give everyone one person, 2 perhaps, but one person to be able to be responsible for, and the other person will be responsible for you as well, to be able to talk to, connect with, have what Miriam said, I thought it was very good, real conversations, not hi, how are you, but real conversations, relationship building. This is a time where we can have some significant conversations. Some of them will be intergenerational, which is also a fantastic thing, as well as to find out what needs each person might have at that time. it's not just seniors who have needs, but there are others as well. I just had Miriam, your grandson just asked me if we can include kid buddies. So yes, Kobe, we will have kid buddies. Kobe's a great kid. So
That's my Kobe.
there you go. That's your Kobe, right? So what else would you suggest for us as a community that we can be doing to sort of get through this social isolation together? That's what we called it. How do we get through this social isolation together? So I turn that to the panel. Anybody can jump in.
I can offer something that I've been thinking about, and there are a myriad of ways of getting through this, and I think we only touched on a few, but one of the, actually two things if you don't mind. One is that if we can develop a list of resources, I know I have lists of apps that are very helpful, whether they're meditation apps or something called What's Up Mental Health, which is a great coping skills kind of app for people who are struggling with mental health issues. You name it, it exists, but maybe we can put something together that we could put up on the OHAV website. That would be terrific. And I also think, you mentioned something about chesed and doing something kind for others, and that I think Rob is spearheading that. I would like to propose doing something like a community-wide gratitude journal, where we could email you, Rabbi, maybe 3 things that we are feeling grateful for, because in a time where we feel like we're losing so much, and even the loss of stability or livelihood or physical contact, we can also start to think about the things we do have and the things we are grateful for. And yes, our houses are becoming smaller, but for me, that's one of the things I actually do feel grateful for, that we have so many nooks and crannies in this house that we are able to kind of coexist in as healthy a way as possible. So if that's okay with you, I almost can see something like, I guess Jordan put together for the journal dinner, almost like a looped gratitude journal on the website. So I'd have to get your agreement on that. But.
So Matthew Lerner is already texting me. He's already started it. That's how quick technology works.
That was not related to the gratitude journal. That was related to the list of resources that I.
Oh, okay. But he'll be working on that too.
But I'll say, Rabbi, I think you actually got a comment from someone that is along these lines. Just if we could share it really quickly, because I think this is essentially gratitude. One of the listeners here had sent a message to the rabbi that they're a widow living alone, and that this situation has really reaffirmed their ability to take care of themselves, and the knowledge that their family and friends and neighbors are there for them. So that right there was an example of someone expressing some real gratitude about being able to validate themselves and saying, I've learned that I'm capable and that I have people who care about me, which I think is great.
Any other suggestions by the panel?
I think you've done it a little bit already with trying to do things like the Tefillah online and Kabbalat Shabbat I was part of, which was beautiful. Things like this, but maybe really trying to find a way, Matt, we're talking to you again, to set up scenarios where the stuff that you're doing, we could do more things as a community during a period of time where people are really looking for community. And as difficult as it is, we do live in this era where we can be a community without walls through the internet like we're doing tonight.
So that was a great softball. So you can see we have a lineup of programming coming all week. We know a lot of you that are listening right now have ideas or talents that you could, whether it's a social program that you can think of, whether it's a lecture you might want to give, and not everything needs to be one big group. Like someone can come up with an idea and we can, let's say it's a game night, and we can do some sort of virtual game night. We can register for it. We can put together smaller groups that we can bring together to make those things happen. So we really want you people here. You can email the rabbi or Jordan. We'll maybe get a form up on the website for people to submit ideas of other programs we can be running. So that whether it's every night, whether it's twice a week, as long as this goes, we really want to make sure that there's lots of opportunities for people to connect and know that other people are there.
Yeah, and along those lines, on the website now on ohab.org, you can, if you go on there, and you'll get emails too, but you can see that there is a full slate of social networking activities this week. Starting tomorrow at 1, there's schmoozing with the rabbi, which is exactly what it sounds like. You can chat with each other and with Rabbi Ebbin tomorrow at 1 p.m. By coming on to this exact link. It's going to be the same link for every single class. And then Tuesday night, we have Dr. David Hauser is going to be giving a fascinating class on the Torah and physics and the Torah. Wednesday night, we have Sisterhood Book Club. Tuesday and Thursday at 1 p.m., the rabbi has his class that he does on every Tuesday and Thursday. And then Thursday night, as the rabbi mentioned in the beginning, you can make some sangria with me to kick off the weekend. But we're really trying to create ways for you, for everybody, for all of us in the OHAV family, and even outside of the OHAV family who is looking for something to connect, and we want to do as much of that as we can.
So if I could just wrap up, I want to, and there was a comment here that I want to make sure that I'm going to address. We are going through extremely difficult times, and if you are struggling with anxiety, as Dr. Mendelowitz said before, where it's really interfering with your daily routine, and I'm not saying that you lose a night's sleep, which I think everybody at this point is doing. I don't think anybody is, goes through, nobody can be normal under the circumstances for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are all going to need our moments. But if you're finding it that it's really preventing from your daily living and overtaking you, then you do need to speak to a doctor. And I hope that people understand that. And there's no shame in this. There's no shame in this, and it would be shameful if you didn't address it, because your family needs you, and your community needs you, and we need you, and you need to be healthy. And so please do seek the help that you need, and please contact me, and I'm sure our panel would be happy to help find resources for you as well. And I can't stress this enough. There are times where you really need to get some additional help, and please take that. I also just want to close with just, as we said, we have so many projects that just came up from tonight, as well as the other things that we're working with. And I ask you to participate because people want to see you. And the Zoom has been a great thing. What we did on Kabbalat Shabbat on Friday, I mean, I entered Shabbat so emotional, with so many emotions because of the highs and the lows, but with so many emotions because there were probably about 75 people on the line that I got to see and to enter Shabbat with, and it was really very special. So we want to see you. You're going to want to see us. We're going to want to connect, and we do this every morning and every evening, and there's no mechitza. So if you ever had a problem with our mechitza, so whatever. But we get to daven, we get to pray every day with each other. And I just want to close with one thing, and that is that our lives are filled with what I call moda'ani moments and minametz moments, which is the moda'ani, I am thankful moments, and minametz are I'm in distress moments. And then there's the stuff in between. And, the challenge is to be able to find God when life is even keel. But the minametz moments, which we're in now, can help, can be overridden with moda'ani moments. And we're going to need, as we mentioned before, the moda'ani moments to get us through the minametz moments. And it's a time to be able to really, during extreme times and challenging times, does bring out, hopefully, the best in people. And so what I hope is that they're going to be talking about this for a very long time. They're writing books about this. And I keep saying, I hope that we'll be able to point and say that this was our finest hour, when we all grouped together and held each other together as strong and up as we could, because we need each other. And I want my bracha to you is that just keep breathing and find ways to help somebody else, and that will get us through these very challenging moments. Thank you again. Alan, did you want to say something? You look like
I was just going to say one thing as a final backup for people, that there are a lot of mental health professionals. A lot of people are doing video and all those kinds of things. But in the modern times, where most places people are complaining that there isn't availability, my hospital is still one of the few places that every day, Monday through Friday, 9 to 7, has an emergency walk-in crisis center. That if you really, not in treatment, your person who's treating you can't see you, You can go there Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. and be seen that day, given treatment that day, making sure you're hooked up that day, that no other place that I know of on Long Island is doing, or Queens for that matter. So I don't think that people need it, but it's nice to have in your back pocket in case you just feel that overwhelmed. I just wanted to have it as a, it's Zucker Hillside is part of Long Island Jewish, and it's called the Crisis Center. And if anybody needs the number or needs and they can't get treatment, just contact the rabbi or me, and we'll be sure to help you find a way.
Right. Please reach out. Please reach out. That's what if you're, the one thing, if you're feeling to the point of being fully overwhelmed and in distress and you don't know what to do, please reach out and we'll find the help that you need, because that's what community does. God bless you all. Thank you to our panel. They're all clapping, by the way. They're all clapping. Clapping. And feel free. There you go. Feel free to. There's 100 people there just talking now. But feel free to. If there's any questions, we're happy to pose them through our panel offline. Thank you again, everyone. Have a great night, and look forward to seeing you on our Community Without Walls. Have a great night.
20 points for presentation. You're never